Hi lovelies, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be drafting and sewing this beautiful pinafore flare gown you see right here on your screen. So at the lower part or the skirt part, it has two bold key splits, and this is a 180 degrees flare. So you can actually pair your pinafore with a shirt or a turtleneck. So I paired mine with a shirt right here, white in color, and you can see what it looks like. So if this sounds like something you're interested in learning how to do, please continue watching. And without much ado, let's get started with what we have for today. This particular fabric I'm working with right here is called a crepe fabric. It has a black background and multiple colors of prints on it, and I used 2 yards, though I didn't end up using everything because the person I was making this dress for is on a smaller size. So I was so particular with the placement of this print you see on this fabric. So I'll go ahead and start drafting, and I have my pattern paper which I folded into 2. It's on fold, right? So at the top part of my pattern paper, I wrote the line, and that will be my shoulder line. So from that line, which is my shoulder line and my starting line, I marked down 14 inches, which is the half length for this particular dress I'm drafting, and the first one is the shoulder line. So on that line, I labeled my shoulder line. I divided my shoulder of 14 inches into 2, so I marked 7 inches right there. So on that same line, I'm going to mark a neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth of 3 inches as well. So I'm trying to use this particular paper to draft out the front part and also the back part of this our gown, okay? So I created my round neckline right here. So I'm going to take the measurement from my neck width up to where my shoulder stopped. So what I had there, I added extra 1 inch to that. So altogether on my half length line, I marked 5 inches. But later I realized it was so much compared to the size of the person that owns this dress, so I had to mark my exact shoulder measurement, that is from my neck width to my shoulder, of 4 inches. All right, so when I did this, I now had to connect that new point I created to my shoulder line on that point where my shoulder is. So now my shoulder line, from my neck width, I went up by half of an inch, and that will be for my shoulder slanting or my shoulder slope, and I slanted it to the other part of my shoulder. Now I'm just going ahead now to cut this out because we are done drafting. So cut off the sides, cut off the neckline, and also cut off the shoulder part. So having done this, I'll get my fabric now and fold it into 2. So I'll be using only the black part of this my fabric to cut out for the upper part of my gown. Then for the prints I have, will go for the lower part or the skirt part. So now I place this my already cut out pattern paper on my folded fabric. So we're not adding any zipper allowance to the back or whatsoever. So I just pinned this to have it in place. So at the base, I added half of an inch stitching allowance. At the sides right here, I also added half of an inch. Then I'm going to cut exactly what I have on the neckline and also on the shoulder. So I want the back part of my gown to be covered. That's for the upper part, okay? So that is why I'm going about it this way. So now, having done all of that, now I unpin this and I measured it out, and you can see what I have right there. So the next now is to work for the front part. So from my half length, I'm going to come up by just 1 inch. So I'll rule out that point which I made right there. And from my neck width, I'm going to slant this into that 1 inch I came up by from my half length. Okay, so this is our neck depth now for the front part. All right, so having connected this way now, I'll go ahead and cut this out from that point. So after cutting it out, I'll now separate this piece of paper I have right here.
Great, I like you, I can't wait. A first time, a first date. You're so fine, I'm so late. You sip wine, I drink straight. Don't waste time.
So you can see what I have right now, and after doing this, I have to go ahead to actually make arrows or points on this because they are now, the upper part and the lower parts are now looking alike, right? So I'll just have to make points so that while cutting, I'll know the parts I'm supposed to notch, okay? So now my fabric folded into 2, I place this my already cut out front pattern paper on this my fabric, and I'm going ahead to pin so that I can have it in place. So before cutting, I'm going to fix or add half of an inch sewing allowance or folding allowance instead all around this piece I have right here, excluding the shoulder area. Okay, so I'm not going to fix the lining to this. I'm just going to fold in those rough edges, right? So all around, I'm going to leave ½ inch all around, excluding the shoulder part, which is this part I'm cutting off right now. So on that arrow, that part, I'll go ahead and notch. So this is for me to indicate the neckline from the sides. Okay, so I'll be able to differentiate that. So having done this now, this is what I have, as you can see right here. So now the next thing is to actually draft out for the lower part or the skirt part of our gown. So I have this my fabric, the remnant of my fabric, and I made sure that the parts where I have these prints is actually going to stay in strategic places on my gown. So I'm going to start off now by folding this into 2 equal halves, because this is all I have left for my fabric. So I'll fold and make sure that the 2 borders meet each other very well this way. So from the other side, which is properly closed, I'm going to bring this other side now that is open and form a triangular shape. Okay, so now I'm just going to hold on this at that point and now flip it this way, so you can see what I have right here. So I have a triangular shape right now. So for me to get my skirt part of my gown, I have to subtract my half length of 14 inches from my full length. So my full length is 37 inches. When I subtract 14 inches from that, I'll be having 24 inches. So that will be the length of my skirt part. So for your waist circumference, you need to count how many folds you have. So right here, or your 180 degrees flare is usually has 4 folds. So I counted what I had. It was 4 folds, and my waist circumference, I divided it into 4 and added extra 5 inches for me to have a very wide waistline because of the key splits we have in front of our skirt part of our gown, right? So you're just going to place your tape at that pointy top part and now move it just in a circular way, the same way I did right here. So now we are going to determine the length of our skirt, because the first chalk mark we have is for the part that will be fixed to the upper part of our gown. Okay, so now from this first mark I made, I went ahead now to get the length of my skirt, which is 24 inches, and I added extra 1 inch, making it altogether 25 inches. So you're going to place the tip of your tape on that first chalk line that went in this curve this way. So as you're marking, you're going to realize that you'll be moving in a semicircle way. All right, it's not going to be straight, it's not going to be slant, it's going to be kind of curved. So that's how you know that you're actually getting it right. Okay, so having marked all of that out, now you now go ahead and cut this out. I hope it's very clear, right? So this part now is for the length of our skirt. So the first line we have at the top part is the waist area, which will be fixed to the upper part of our gown. And remember, I added extra 5 inches to my waist circumference divided by 4 because of the bold key split we have in front of the skirt part of this our gown. So I'll go ahead now and separate these 2 flare which I have right here. For one is for the front and the other is for the back. So because of this extra wideness we have for the waist parts, it's going to be big at the back, but later we'll just go ahead and just cut it out. Okay, the main thing here is to get an extra allowance in front of the waist part for our bold key splits. So having separated these 2 now, you can see I now have 2 flares. One is for the front and one is for the back. So I'll keep that aside now to cut out our band, which was fixed or attached on the waist or the half length of this our pinafore gown, right? So I'm folding this piece into 4 because I need to, altogether I have to cut out 4 bands. Okay, so I divided my waist circumference by 4 and I added extra 1.5 inches to what I had. So for the wideness, I used my ruler I have right here, which is 2 inches wide. So I want the band to be 1 inch at the end of the day after stitching, thereby taking half of an inch at the upper part and lower part, and I'll be left with just 1 inch. So I just placed my ruler on my fabric and I went ahead to trace it out, and as you can see, I'm cutting this out right now. So I need to have 4 pieces of this. I folded into 4 and cut out. I have 2 pieces, so I'll do the same thing again, and right now I have 4 pieces. So this is what it looks like after stitching up everything. I'll have 1 inch as a wideness. So for the upper part of that my gown, I've gone ahead to weave the neckline area, the sides, as you can see right here, but I'm yet to weave the shoulder area. Okay, so this is it for the back parts, and I'm just going to go ahead now to fold this in. Remember the 1/2 inch we left all around, so I'm going to fold it in, but on the neckline I will fold it in slightly, but on the sides, which was the part where we left the 1/2 inch for folding, I'll fold in 1/2 inch just this way and now stitch. So this is what I have. This is it for the back part, and I've gone ahead now to also weave. So now I'm going to start joining the shoulder of the front part and the back part. So with the head of my notch I have on my neckline, I'm able to identify the parts where my neckline will be facing because it's very necessary. So I went ahead now to pin this on the shoulder area. So after pinning, I'm going to stitch using just 1/2 inch. So after stitching, you flip this to the right side this way, just as I've done right here. So you're going to get the front part of your dress this way. You're going to make one part of your dress to overlap just slightly. You can overlap with about 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch, right? So this is what you have. Then you now stitch that part. So this is what I have after stitching. I've removed my pins so you can see what I have right now. So the next thing for me now is to actually go ahead to notch the center piece of my back dress. Okay, so for the front parts, this will already serve as the front or center part. Okay, so I'll keep that aside now to work for the waist part of my front flare. Okay, so I measured out what I had. I divided my waist circumference by 2. So what I had was 12.5 inches. So 12.5 inches, you can see I have extra allowance of 5.5 inches. So this will serve as my folds for my key split. So because I also need extra stitching allowance for the size of this gown, I had to trim off the waist part a little more, because by the time I trim this off, it will expand or increase my waist circumference. Okay, so that was why I trimmed off, and I went ahead to notch the middle of this flare. So now that middle I notched, I'm going to like drag up. If it's about 1 inch, or it depends on how bold you want your pleats to be. Remember, this is a key split. All right, so I will drag. For here I dragged about 1 inch up. Then for the other side I dragged 1 inch as well. So just ensure that for the folds you have inside stops exactly on top of that notch which was made at the middle parts. Okay, just like this one. Now make sure that they are meeting. That is why it is called a key split. When you fold this for one part and you're trying to drag 1 inch away from your fabric to meet the other part, make sure that they meet together this way, and this is why it's called a key split, as you can see right here. So arrange it properly on that notch you have at the middle of this your flare. And I actually took my time to go about this, as you can see right here. So when it's arranged properly and it is meeting each other right there, I'll go ahead and fold for the other side, and the fold I'll be having will be facing the side of my skirt part of my gown. So just watch what I'm doing in case you don't really understand my explanation.
Damn, what a hell of a view. I feel good, you look great.
So you can see that my pleats are not as bold as the one on the thumbnail, right? So after pleating, I went ahead to measure out my waistline, and what I had was okay, including for the joining at the sides. So as I've done this right now, you go ahead and stitch up that upper part, and also make sure you iron this out properly. All right, so this is what the back should look like, and the back should have these folds as well, just the same way you have at the top part. So that's how to know that you actually got it right. Okay, so just stitch up that part where you've pleated, and that is just that. So now back to the upper part of my gown. I'm going to fix this band which I've cut out so far. So you're going to just get all your band and nudge them at the middle by folding them into 2 first. So right side facing the wrong side of each part of your dress, you're going to place them this way. Okay, so now we have this our dress, or the blouse or part of our gown, in between these 2 bands. Okay, so you see how I place them right side facing both the wrong and the right side of this blouse part of our gown. Okay, So you can see they also align right here. So after pinning, I'll go ahead and stitch using 1/2 inch for the part where I pinned. So I'll repeat the same thing for the back part of this our dress. So I'll place this my band right here. Right side is facing the wrong side. Now I have my dress in between these two bands. Make sure you notch as well. And this is what I have. So make sure you notch, please don't forget to notch. All right, so I'm going to now stitch this part I pinned using just 1/2 inch. So having done that, you can see what I have right here. So go ahead and give this a very good ironing and you're good to go. So having done this, now you're going to face this part to the wrong side and it's facing the camera. So take away that band at the right side, like just spread it out this way. So you go ahead now to get your actual waist measurement divided by 2. You now add 3/4 inch as your sewing allowance. Okay, so what you're going to do right now is that you get the skirt part of your gown and you're going to notch that middle part. You notch on your skirt part, you're going to pin it now on this chalk mask I made right here. So do ensure that the right side of the skirt is facing you and the wrong side of the upper part of your blouse is facing you before you go ahead to pin and stitch. So right now I've gone ahead to do this and I flip this to the wrong side, sorry, that's what it looks like. And on the right side we still have our band open, it's not properly stitched yet. So please don't worry about all of this, I'll go ahead and iron this out later. So now we are going to use this remnant we have right here on our band to close up the rough part on the waist part of this our skirt. So I'll go ahead and fold in 1/2 inch and now pin. So you can see that after stitching I'll be left with 1 inch as the wideness of my band. Okay, so just go ahead and pin and also iron is very, very important. Okay, so you can see what I have right now. I'll go ahead and stitch and now iron this out very well. So do it for the both sides, both for the back and the front. So when I did this, guys, this is what I have. You can see how nice it's really looking. So now I'm going to flip it to the wrong side or the back part so that I can take my waist measurements and now stitch up the sides. Okay, so the back is looking way bigger. It's normal because we didn't work with our exact waist circumference. We just have to cut it out. Okay, after taking our actual waist measurement, whatever excesses you have for the back will just be trimmed off from the waist. Okay, so it's normal, like honestly it's normal. So now I arrange this on the waist and make sure that the band aligns properly. So you see that back part is longer and wider than the front part. Okay, this is because we not actually take away anything from the back part of our flare, right? So having arranged this, now I'll divide my waist circumference by 2. All right, so I had 12.5 inches, which I'm going to mark right now after pinning.
So catch me if I fall.
So I'll mark what I have at both sides on this my waist or my band. So I'm going to stitch from one part all the way down to the end of this or the hem of this my gown. Okay, just straight. You're not meant to stitch it to be slant or whatever, just straight down. Then for this other one, from the waist I'll mark about 7.5 inches. Then from that 7.5 inches I'll now stitch down straight. So I'm marking 7.5 inches because we'll be fixing our zipper right there. It's either this black or the red one, depending. Okay, for me. Then now go ahead and hem the base. So by the time you are done, this is what you should have. Go ahead and give this a very good and nice pressing and ironing, as you can see I've done right here. So I really appreciate you all for coming this far to watch this video, and if you are yet to subscribe, please kindly do so. It's never going to be a thing of regret. Thank you so much to all my subscribers, and don't forget that I love you all so much. See you all in my next one. Do have a good time ahead of you all. Bye.